Alrighty, so the lesson is finished now. Let's do a little bit of a wrap-up. So if you two don't mind, could you give us some feedback on the lesson?
Sure. If you don't mind me going first, I noticed that you have a lot of pictures. Why do you have so many pictures for your lesson, for your introduction lesson?
I actually have a few more pictures just in case the JT asks me to do a longer lesson. This is only a short lesson, but I think lots of pictures make it easy for the students to understand. Plus, when I use pictures, I don't have to use Japanese.
And I noticed that you went from like the bigger picture from America to state and then actually city. So I mean, I didn't know so much about America myself, and yet it was easy to understand. I guess that's going to go in the classroom as well.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. I think my style is always to go from the big picture to the smaller picture, I guess, literally and figuratively. So. Any other comments or?
I just thought you mentioned the same things time and time again. Every single time you put something new on the board, you just went right back to the beginning. Is that needed? I mean, they're junior high school students. Surely they should know that automatically after you've told them once.
Well, yeah, it's basic information, but because it's something I want them to remember from now and hopefully forever, I think repetition at this first stage is really important. So the students will be able to communicate, who's the new ALT? His name is Michael Sullivan.
Yeah.
And I think it's valuable. So always going back to the first step. My name is Michael Sullivan. I'm from America. I'm from Seattle. And it's also using the target language. For example, this was about a Ninensei class, and so I used a lot of the Ichinensei grammar. So I looked at the Ichinensei book and used a lot of that target language. I can't, I'm from, and then I had the teacher ask me questions.
Actually, that's a point I wanted to bring up. I thought that you were involved in the lesson quite a lot for a self-introduction lesson. What did you think? Did you feel?
I felt really comfortable to work with you because it was even your self-introduction, but you still ask me for help. Even putting on the whiteboard, I feel like I was involved.
I like the question demonstration, kind of asking a question first before getting the JT to ask you the question. I think that helps, the students see the language, but also for you to know what it is he really wants you to do, which is good. I like that very much. Go along to the foundations as well.
Right, that's a good point. I also repeat what you said, so it was easy to follow. Plus, they listened twice, the sentence. It was a good way, I think.
Yeah. Something I noticed, too, is a lot of times the students don't know very much about the JTE. So sometimes they find out some very interesting things. For example, I found out something very interesting about the JTE this time. Do you remember what that was?
Snowboarding. Going to Seattle. Yeah.
Right. So she's actually been to my hometown.
Yes.
So
after I met you.
Yeah, after. So
that will happen, I guess, in school as well. You meet JTs that have something in common or want to go to your hometown, for example, and that starts a relationship that students can feed off. Yeah, that's very nice.
Something I felt was quite nice, though, was, I mean, you were listening all the time to your students, and whenever we got something from the presentation and repeated it or gave you the answer you were looking for, you just looked for that person. You looked, well, it was me in my case, and gave me praise direct to my face. So that was really good. That was really nice.
Very specific praise. It wasn't just general like, oh yeah, good job. It was very specific praise.
Yeah.
I think that's really important.
It was aimed at me. I felt good about that. Thank you.
There was a lot of clarity there as well in terms of, I didn't hear you once say Japanese. You said the pictures helped you, but in the activity as well, you didn't really explain it. You took us through each stage, which using the using the JT was important. Why
was
did
that
you do it
easy?
that way?
Was it easy to follow the way it was demonstrated, rather than explained?
It was very easy to follow what you were doing. If I can just say one thing, I mean, I know it's an A3 size thing, but the questions, the words, I couldn't see those at all. Those little pieces of paper were really tiny.
Yeah.
Does that? I mean, what can you do about that? I mean,
I don't know. What can I do about it? I wonder if it's really important right now, because we've got the basic questions, which are, you can kind of see. And yes, the smaller questions are more difficult to see from the back of the room or even from the front of the room, but the students are going to be playing this in their small groups. And so every group gets an A3 size plus all of the question cards. And I think that they can mix and match it. If I make these much bigger, it doesn't look right on the question.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of things to think about when you create your activities. You want it to be as visible as possible, but it also has to look right.
This is a self-introduction. You just said a minute ago that it's a review of the first grade stuff, so they should know this material quite well. And I guess once you go into venturing into new material, then maybe something bigger and more presented may be applicable at that stage. So yeah, I can see that.
Yeah.
But again, they still had something to reaffirm to what they just seen. So.
And they do know the material fairly well, you would hope, but the fact that they're working in a group of 4 or more means that they can rely on each other to come up with the answers. There's no stress of one student having to come up with an answer.
You mentioned they know the material, but the questions you have on here relate directly to the information that you presented to them.
Right.
Do you, when you've got a longer time, do you add in questions that they haven't had the information, or is that not really part of the self-introduction?
I have more pictures, but obviously I don't have more questions here. So if I have, in this case, for example, the JTE gave me about 15 minutes.
Yeah.
And so this is about my 15-minute version. I have maybe 4 or 5 more pictures to extend my presentation just a few more minutes. But obviously there's not a game that goes beside it. As an extended game, after we do this first round, if I have more time, I like to do a game of crisscross.
Yeah.
But also, when the students think of their own questions, you know, this is an opportunity, instead of me just starting off the lesson, hey, do you have a question for me? I've actually given them lots of examples. There's lots of listening repetition that they get to hear. Then in their group, they get to think of a question. And then from there, one person from their group can actually ask me a question. And it makes it more organized.
You said it was a 15-minute lesson, which is great, and in terms of that section, but how long would you expect an activity like that to run for? Would you let it go for the 30 minutes, or would you go for 10 minutes, 5 minutes every time, and just add to it?
I don't believe any activity should ever go longer than 12 or 15 minutes, even in a regular lesson. I think you should keep your activities between 7 and 15 minutes as a maximum. And you should try to connect activities so that there are smooth transitions from activity 1 to activity 2.
Right. So keeping them engaged, but not staying on the same thing for too long, because that will really drag the engagement down. Okay.
It's a kind of the model type of worksheet, I think, because the new course of study is focused on 4 skills. The first of all, they focus on listening and speaking to us, and after that, we give them opportunity to actually write and think.
Yeah.
So this is a good worksheet, I think.
Okay. Cool. Thank you very much, Mike.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good job.
Thank you very much, Mike.
Thank you.